These cards, I hold one up here, have a history of being used by white supremacist groups to intimidate people of color. Death cards is what they call them. These cards, found in Colorado, had the address and the phone number of the Aurora ICE detention facility printed on them. Aurora is a sister city, neighboring city to Denver. Now imagine just for a second that you haven't heard from your brother, your sister, and when you finally find their empty, abandoned car, it has one of these death cards sitting in the driver's seat. And this is cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And it fits into the troubling pattern that we're seeing come from some of the top officials in the White House. Mr. President,
I recognize the senator from Colorado.
I ask unanimous consent to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we like to believe that when democracy erodes, that it's unpredictable and in some ways out of our control. But history tells us a different story. Authoritarianism rises through a time-tested playbook. These leaders have learned which moves weaken opponents, which tactics will rally a crowd, and which moments of fear or crisis work best to their advantage. They don't need to invent new strategies. They can run familiar plays. There's one target we're watching this administration go after the hardest, and that is the truth. They begin by attacking every source of independent information. They start with universities and colleges. They move on to our largest research institutions. They've discredited or tried to discredit every journalist whose reporting differs from their own narrow point of view. In doing so, they've tried to make the administration and the president the sole source of truth. We've seen this play out in Minneapolis during the past few weeks. So let's get a few facts straight. On January 7th, ICE officers shot and killed Renee Good while she was in her own car. She was a mother of 3, originally from Colorado Springs. Then again this past weekend, Americans watched the videotape of federal immigration agents shooting and killing Alex Preddy. They fired 10 times in 5 seconds. It's sickening. No family should have to witness their loved one being killed in such a fashion, and yet, obviously, Alex's parents did. His parents live in Colorado. I connected with them earlier this week. Among other things, they wanted to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that Alex's name is out front, that we keep their son's story alive, to make sure that his life wasn't lost in vain. They've asked for truth and accountability. And what they're getting, what all of us are getting, are excuses and lies about their son. The reality of who Alex Preddy was doesn't fit the administration's playbook. So they're filling the airwaves with lies, repeating them over and over and over to try and somehow get them to stick. DHS Secretary Noem, within hours of Preddy's death, said, and I quote, "It looks like a situation where an individual arrived on the scene to inflict maximum violence and to kill law enforcement," end quote. Next, it was Greg Bovino, Trump's now-fired Border Patrol commander, saying Preddy intended, and I quote, "to massacre law enforcement," end quote, and that he, quote, "violently resisted." Stephen Miller called Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, with Vice President Vance and President Trump promoting that sentiment and that blatant lie from their pulpits. By this point, we have all seen that video. From multiple angles, we've seen it with our own eyes. Alex was not a terrorist. He was in no way an assassin. He was a U.S. citizen exercising his First Amendment right to protest ICE's lawlessness. This week, families in Eagle County, Colorado experienced another type of cruelty that fits into this administration's playbook. They found death cards held up in the automobiles of their family members who were taken away by ICE agents. These cards, I hold one up here, have a history of being used by white supremacist groups to intimidate people of color. Death cards is what they call them. These cards found in Colorado had the address and the phone number of the Aurora ICE detention facility printed on them. Aurora is a sister city, neighboring city to Denver. Now imagine just for a second that you haven't heard from your brother, your sister, and when you finally find their empty, abandoned car, it has one of these death cards sitting in the driver's seat. I mean, this is cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And it fits into the troubling pattern that we're seeing come from some of the top officials in the White House. Now, this morning I voted against government funding that would have handed billions of dollars to DHS. Continuing to fund ICE while federal officers terrorize our cities and kill people is unconscionable. We need to stop ICE officers beating Americans, killing Americans, arresting Americans without due process, taking away the civil rights of Americans. The overhaul of ICE that we're demanding is common sense. The fact is that these are all basic standards of local law enforcement who go after violent criminals, gangsters, in many ways the worst of the worst. These are standards that those local police officers already follow. ICE needs first to take their masks off. They need to turn on body cameras. They need to be clearly identified. There can be no accountability without transparency. No more unmarked vans and masked agents pulling people over and pulling people away and arresting them to wherever. No more roving patrols. ICE needs to have judicial warrants signed by a judge. They need to stop arresting children on the side of the road and end these cruel family separation policies. Secretary Noem, what she said, I think, is untenable and unacceptable, and I think she needs to resign. But let's be clear, ICE is carrying out the policies of our president. So just changing the leadership at ICE or DHS is not going to be sufficient. We have to fundamentally overhaul the lawlessness of these organizations. This administration is asking us to ignore what we can see with our own eyes. They get us to a point where we mistrust so many sources of information, and they force us to rely on believing what we see. They're asking us to believe lies about Alex and about Renee, about what's happening in Minneapolis, but we watched the videos. We saw those videos. Those words matter. We watched, we saw, because they acknowledge a larger truth that binds us all together. We saw what happens. We saw what happened. We saw the cruelty, and we saw and understand that it needs to end. Asking us to make peace with that cruelty is asking us to ignore the values that make us Americans. It's telling us to believe somehow we owe nothing to each other, not to our neighbors, not to our community, not to our country. We will not. We know the truth, and we're not going to look away. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the floor.